All right, so welcome back to this video. My last video went down very well and it helped me a lot, so I've decided to make a video on the topic I struggle with the most this unit, which is CPU scheduling. So we'll jump right into it. CPU scheduling determines which process gets a CPU and for how long when multiple processes are waiting to run. So this basically means it's going to try and reduce the waiting time and improve system responsiveness. Now I'm going to go through 4 different algorithms to help prioritize different things depending on what you're doing. So let's go right in and start with the first one, the first come, first serve algorithm. So this one is the simplest in my opinion. It's very similar. The way I like to remember it is by waiting at a grocery store in line. So the first person to show up goes first, the second person, and then the third. And everyone just goes in the order that they come. However, you'll see that the con to this is that even if you don't have a lot of groceries and the person in front of you has a lot of groceries, you're still going to be waiting a long time, even though you're not buying as much. So I'll very quickly run through this. You'll see here J1 will arrive at time 0. It'll run for its 20 CPU bursts before it performs its I/O for 4 cycles, so it temporarily leaves the CPU. The next job in the queue is J2, which will run for 4 cycles. You can see that right here. Then J3 will run for 3 cycles here, and then it's done. It finishes. So it goes right back to the beginning of the queue with J1, which runs for now 15 cycles. And then that'll pass off again to J2, which will finish off J2 with that 4 cycle CPU burst right here before we realize off of our last J2 it needed to wait 10 cycles before it started back up again, and we finished out with our final 10 right here. Now we'll continue on to shortest job first. So there's 2 different types. There's non-preemptive and preemptive. We're going to go through non-preemptive first. So basically that means we cannot stop a process once it starts running. You'll see here that I kind of equated it to the express lane. It's not a perfect analogy, but I think it gets the job done. It's better for short jobs than first come, first serve. But the cons are that it needs a priori knowledge of execution times and long jobs may starve. I had to look up how to pronounce this word, by the way. Anyways, we see that with this example, J1 arrives first, so it has a burst unit of 7. While J1 is running, the other jobs arrive. So after J1 finishes, the scheduler will look at the shortest job available, which is J3. And you'll see here, J3 finishes. After that, it becomes a tie between J2 and J4. Now, because there's a tie, the way to break this tie, the system's going to look at who was here first, which is going to be J2, which means J2 will finish out its CPU burst, and then J4 completing the cycle. Now we'll move on to the preemptive, and this is different from non-preemptive because it allows a scheduler to interrupt a running process, which this one didn't. So we'll see that in action here, where J2 arrives at time 0, so it starts running. However, at time 2, J2 arrives, and because its CPU burst is shorter, the scheduler switches to J2 instead. You can see that here. At time 4, J3 arrives, and because that's shorter, it'll finish out right here. Now J3 finishes, so we go back to J2 since now it has the shortest. We'll finish that out, and then we'll go down and move to J4 over here, which just goes to show that the scheduler is always choosing the job with the shortest remaining time. And finally, we will finish off with our round robin. So with our round robin, it's commonly used for interactive systems. Instead of letting one job run to completion, each job will get a small fixed amount of time. Back when we were learning about strict alternation, I really like the professor's example of a two children sharing a 3DS, and whenever I hear round robin, I immediately think of my own personal 3DS example, but now with the new Switch 2. So for my example, let's say me and my boyfriend just went and we split a Switch 2 cost down the middle, and we each bought our own games. Now, we would each want equal time to finish out our games, as we both put enough effort, or both put our money into it. So very similar to that, we're going to make sure that each process gets its own equal amount of time to finish its whole run through. And so here we'll see with J1, its CPU burst is 53. Well, our quantum is 20, which means we can only go for 20 cycles until it's time to switch to J2, which is 17, and that finishes because it's less than our quantum. We'll come back and we'll continue on with J3 right here. Once again, we're going in order. It's a very equal and fair system. And then J4 before returning back to J1. Now, I like to use the Switch example because I like the idea of maybe finishing the run through of the game, and now because you're done, you're gonna let the other person finish their run through of the game. So this is a very brief overview of CPU scheduling, and I hope that this helps. Good luck!